The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields of Erebus Prime. It was a peaceful day on the human colony planet, nestled at the edge of uncharted space. The air buzzed with activity as farmers worked their crops under alien skies. Children laughed near schools built from local stone, and engineers fine-tuned machinery in the bustling industrial zones. Life here wasn't perfect, but it was good. Humanity had carved out a home among the stars, and Erebus Prime stood as a testament to its resilience. Captain Alara Voss stood on the balcony of her temporary quarters, gazing out over the sprawling cityscape below. She had been stationed here during her leave, far from the front lines of United Earth Fleet operations. Her commanding officer had insisted she take the time off after months of grueling missions. "You've earned it," he'd said. But standing there now, watching the golden light bathe the landscape, Alara felt restless. Something about this place unsettled her, a quiet unease that lingered like an itch. She couldn't scratch. Her thoughts were interrupted by a distant rumble. At first, she thought it might be thunder, though the weather reports had promised clear skies. Then came another sound, a deep, resonant boom that shook the ground beneath her feet. Alarms began blaring all around the city. Red lights flashed in rhythmic bursts, painting everything in crimson hues. Panic spread quickly through the streets as people scrambled for cover or tried to figure out what was happening. Alara didn't wait to find out. Years of military training kicked in, and she sprinted toward the nearest command center. As she ran, the truth revealed itself in horrifying clarity. Massive shapes descended from the heavens' warships, unlike anything she'd ever seen. They were sleek and angular, their surfaces shimmering with strange energy patterns. Alien symbols glowed along their hulls, pulsating ominously. These weren't explorers or traders. They were conquerors. The first wave of attacks came without warning. Beams of searing light lanced down from the ships, striking buildings, power plants, and defense grids. Explosions erupted everywhere, sending plumes of smoke and debris spiraling into the air. Screams filled the streets as chaos consumed the once peaceful colony. Civilians fled in every direction, some carrying wounded loved ones, others simply running blind with terror. By the time Alara reached the command center, the situation was dire. Officers shouted orders over crackling comm systems, while technicians frantically worked to bring up defensive measures. Screens displayed live feeds of the devastation unfolding outside. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble, and fires raged unchecked. Casualty numbers climbed higher with each passing second. "Captain Voss!" someone called out. A young lieutenant approached her, his face pale but determined. "We need your help. Our orbital defenses are offline, and communication with Earth has been severed." Alara nodded sharply. "What do we know about them? Who are they?" "No idea," the lieutenant replied grimly. "But they're broadcasting something. Listen." He tapped a few commands into a nearby console, and a distorted voice filled the room. It spoke in broken galactic standard, the universal language of trade and diplomacy. "This is your warning, humanity. Your expansion ends here. Resistance will be met with destruction." The message repeated itself, cold and mechanical. There was no emotion in the words, no hint of mercy. Whoever these invaders were, they meant business. Alara clenched her fists tightly. "Do we have any working ships left?" "Just a handful of shuttles and freighters," the lieutenant admitted. "Nothing equipped for combat." She cursed under her breath. Without proper defenses, Erebus Prime was sitting ducks. Every second that passed brought more death and destruction. Still, giving up wasn't an option, not while there was even a sliver of hope. "Get me access to the emergency broadcast system," Alara ordered. "I'll try to organize evacuations. Prioritize civilians and essential personnel. And get those shuttles ready. We may not hold them off, but we can damn well make sure they don't take us all." As the team sprang into action, Alara stepped up to the microphone. Her voice echoed across the colony, steady and resolute despite the turmoil raging inside her. "Attention, all citizens of Erebus Prime. This is Captain Alara, Voss of the United Earth Fleet. We are under attack by an unknown enemy force. Follow evacuation protocols immediately. Head to designated shelters and await further instructions. Stay calm and look out for one another. Together, we will survive this." Her words offered little comfort, but they gave people something to focus on amidst the chaos. Families gathered what little they could carry and headed toward underground bunkers. Others boarded shuttles bound for orbit, praying they'd escape before the attackers closed in completely. Meanwhile, Alara coordinated efforts to slow the assault. Small squads of soldiers armed with portable anti-aircraft weapons engaged the alien forces, buying precious minutes for civilians to flee. Their bravery was admirable, but ultimately futile against such overwhelming odds. One by one, the resistance fell until only silence remained. Hours later, the bombardment finally ceased. Smoke choked the air, and the acrid smell of burning metal stung Alara's nostrils. She surveyed the ruins of Erebus Prime, her heart heavy with grief and rage. So many lives lost. So much potential snuffed out in an instant. For the first time in years, tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet dawn. As dawn broke over the shattered landscape, a single shuttle lifted off from the surface. On board was Alara, along with a handful of survivors who had managed to evade capture or death. As they ascended into the void above, she stared back at the ruined world below. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, the ones responsible for this massacre awaited judgment. And Alara vowed silently that they would pay for every life taken, for every dream shattered, for every moment of suffering inflicted upon humanity. Unbeknownst to her, automated distress signals from Erebus Prime's last functioning satellites were already racing through the galaxy, carrying news of the tragedy back to Earth. When humanity learned of the massacre, the response would be swift and merciless. The Crittery Syndicate had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and soon the stars themselves would bear witness to the wrath of a species pushed too far. For now, though, Alara clung to the fragile hope that survival meant possibility, that somewhere, somehow, humanity would rise again, and when it did, nothing would stand in its way. The distress signals from Erebus Prime reached Earth like a shockwave. They carried fragmented images of destruction-burning cities, collapsing buildings, and the haunting silence of a once thriving colony now reduced to ruins. The automated messages repeated endlessly, their mechanical voices relaying the grim details of the attack. Each transmission ended with the same chilling declaration: "This is your warning, humanity. Your expansion ends here." News of the massacre spread rapidly across human settlements. From the bustling megacities of Earth to the farthest outposts on distant moons, people stopped what they were doing to process the enormity of the loss. Screens in public squares displayed footage of the devastation, while news anchors struggled to find words that could convey the gravity of the situation. Social media exploded with outrage, grief, and calls for action. Billions mourned the dead, but beneath the sorrow simmered something else, a burning anger that refused to be extinguished. On Earth, the United Earth Senate convened in an emergency session. The Grand Chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from every corner of human civilization gathered to decide the next steps. Some argued for restraint, urging caution and diplomacy. "We don't even know who these attackers are," one senator said. "We need to investigate before we act rashly." Others demanded immediate retaliation. "They've drawn first blood," another countered. "If we don't respond, they'll see us as weak. They'll come again, and next time, it won't just be Erebus Prime. Amidst the heated debate, Admiral Marcus Hawley entered the chamber, a towering figure clad in the dark blue uniform of the United Earth Fleet. Hawley exuded authority and resolve. His sharp features bore the lines of decades spent commanding ships through battles both small and large. He walked to the podium at the center of the room, his boots clicking against the polished floor. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that silenced the entire assembly. "Today, we mourn," Hawley began, his tone measured but firm. "Millions of our brothers and sisters have been lost, homes destroyed, lives shattered. This is not just an attack on Erebus Prime, it is an attack on all of humanity. But let me make one thing clear. This will not break us. It will not stop us. We are humans, and when pushed, we do not falter, we fight." The chamber erupted into applause, though some senators remained skeptical. Hawley raised a hand, and the noise died down. These attackers, they thought they could crush us. They thought they could wipe us out and scare us into submission. But they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated humanity. Today, we grieve. Tomorrow, we rise. Together, we will take back what is ours. By the end of his speech, there was no dissent left in the room. The Senate voted unanimously to declare war on the unknown enemy. Within hours, orders went out to every fleet, shipyard, and military installation under human control. Humanity mobilized with a speed and unity rarely seen before. Shipyards operated around the clock, churning out vessels faster than anyone thought possible. Factories shifted production from civilian goods to weapons and ammunition. Even civilian ships were retrofitted for combat, their crews volunteering en masse to join the fight. Alara Voss watched the news unfold from aboard the shuttle carrying her and the other survivors away from Erebus Prime. Her hands gripped the armrests tightly as she listened to Admiral Hale's speech. Every word resonated deep within her, reigniting the fire that had burned inside her since the moment she'd witnessed the colony's destruction. She knew then that she couldn't sit idly by not, while the enemy still roamed free. When the shuttle docked at a nearby space station, Alara immediately reported to the nearest recruitment office. She wasn't surprised to find long lines of volunteers waiting to sign up. Men and women of all ages stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces etched with determination. Some were seasoned veterans returning to duty, while others had never held a weapon in their lives. All shared a common purpose: to protect humanity and avenge Erebus Prime. Alara bypassed the line, presenting her credentials to the officer in charge. "Captain Alara Voss, reporting for active duty," she announced. The officer glanced at her record, nodded, and handed her a fresh uniform. "Welcome back, Captain. You're needed." Over the following weeks, humanity prepared for war on a scale never seen before. Fleets converged near the edge of Crithari territory, forming a massive armada that stretched across the stars. Dreadnoughts bristling with cannons floated alongside agile fighters and heavily armored carriers. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged ships and upgrade older models with cutting-edge technology. Scientists unveiled experimental weapon systems, including quantum disruptors capable of tearing apart enemy shields and plasma lances that could slice through even the thickest hulls. Among the fleet, morale soared despite the looming threat. Soldiers trained relentlessly, honing their skills for the battles ahead. Pilots practiced complex maneuvers in simulators, while ground troops drilled in zero-gravity environments. Civilians played their part too, sending care packages and messages of support to the front lines. Artists painted murals depicting humanity's triumph over adversity, and musicians composed anthems that echoed through the corridors of every ship. Alara found herself assigned to the Aegis, one of the new dreadnoughts leading the charge. Its sleek design and advanced weaponry made it a symbol of humanity's ingenuity and resilience. As she stepped onto the bridge for the first time, she felt a surge of pride. The crew greeted her warmly, their eyes filled with respect and admiration. Many had heard stories of her bravery during the Erebus Prime evacuation, and they looked to her as a leader who understood the stakes firsthand. Admiral Hawley himself visited the Aegis shortly before departure. He addressed the assembled crew, his presence commanding attention. "You are the tip of the spear," he declared. "When we strike hard. When we fight to win. Remember why you're here for Erebus Prime, for justice, and for the future of humanity itself." As the fleet set course for Critheri territory, the mood aboard the Aegis was a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Alara spent hours poring over tactical maps, studying potential strategies, and preparing for whatever lay ahead. She also took time to connect with the crew, sharing meals with them and listening to their stories. Despite the grim task before them, there was a sense of camaraderie that strengthened their resolve in the quiet moments between briefings and drills. Alara often found herself staring out at the stars. The vastness of space reminded her of how small humanity was compared to the universe, but also of how far they had come. From fragile beings huddled around campfires on a single planet, they had grown into explorers, builders, and warriors. Now, faced with an existential threat, they stood ready to defend everything they had achieved. The journey to Critheri territory was long, but the fleet moved with purpose. Along the way, they encountered signs of the enemy's influence, abandoned outposts, scavenged resources, and eerie broadcasts warning others to stay away. Each discovery fueled the crew's determination. They were closing in, and soon, the galaxy would witness the full might of humanity unleashed. For Alara, the mission was personal. Every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, only reinforced her vow to see this through. The memory of Erebus Prime burned brightly in her mind, driving her forward. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger and sacrifice, but she also knew that humanity would prevail. Not because they were stronger or smarter than their enemies, but because they refused to give up. Because they chose to rise no matter the odds. And so, shadowed by countless warships, humanity marched toward destiny. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Critheri territory, a vast expanse of stars and swirling nebulae that marked the border between known space and the unknown. Ahead lay their first target, Zaltharis Station, a sprawling orbital fortress that served as the nerve center for the Critheri Syndicate's military operations. It was from here that the aliens coordinated their attacks on human colonies, including Erebus Prime. Taking it out would cripple their ability to wage war and send a clear message that humanity was not to be trifled with. Alara Voss stood on the bridge of the Aegis, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The holographic projection showed Zaltharis Station as a massive ring-shaped structure surrounded by layers of defenses. Dozens of alien warships patrolled its perimeter, their sleek forms bristling with weapons. Energy shields glowed faintly around the station, shimmering like an impenetrable barrier. It was a daunting sight, but Alara felt no fear, only resolve. Admiral Marcus Hawley addressed the fleet over the comm system, his voice steady and commanding. "This is it," he said. "Our first strike against the Critheri. Remember why we're here for Erebus Prime, for justice, and for the future of humanity itself. Let's show them what happens when you mess with us." The crew aboard the Aegis erupted into cheers, their spirits lifted by Hale's words. Alara turned to her team, nodding sharply. "You heard him. Prepare for combat. We've trained for this moment. Now it's time to deliver." As the fleet moved closer to Zaltharis Station, the Critheri responded swiftly. Their warships formed up in tight formations, ready to intercept the invaders. The silence of space was shattered as both sides opened fire. Beams of energy lanced through the void, lighting up the darkness with flashes of blue and green. Explosions rocked the hulls of ships caught in the crossfire, sending debris spiraling into the abyss. Alara gripped the railing of the bridge, watching the chaos unfold. The battle was intense, and humanity was outnumbered. But they had one advantage: sheer determination. Pilots performed daring maneuvers, weaving between enemy fire while launching counterattacks. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged systems mid-combat, keeping their ships operational despite heavy damage. Soldiers boarded enemy vessels in close-quarters battles, fighting tooth and nail to gain the upper hand. On board the Aegis, Alara coordinated the assault with precision. She barked orders to her crew, directing fighters to exploit weak points in the Critheri formation and ordering gunners to focus fire on key targets. Her leadership inspired those around her, and the ship became a beacon of hope within the fleet. Despite the odds, they pushed forward, inching closer to the station with every passing minute. But the Critheri weren't about to let them win easily. Reinforcements poured in from nearby sectors, adding to the already overwhelming numbers. Waves of alien fighters swarmed the human fleet, peppering their ships with relentless barrages. Shields flickered and failed under the strain, leaving vulnerable hulls exposed to devastating hits. Casualties mounted, and the cost of victory grew heavier with each passing second. Amidst the turmoil, Alara noticed something unusual. One of the Critheri commanders, a towering figure clad in ornate armor, was issuing orders from a flagship near the heart of the station. His presence seemed to galvanize the enemy forces, turning the tide of the battle ever so slightly. If they could neutralize him, it might break the Critheri's morale and give humanity the edge they needed. "Lieutenant," Alara called out, pointing at the flagship on the tactical display. "That's our priority target. Get me a squad together. I'm going in." Her decision drew protests from some members of the crew. "Captain, you can't risk yourself like this," one officer argued. "We need you here." "I'm not asking permission," Alara replied firmly. "If we take out their leader, we'll have a chance. Trust me." Within minutes, a small boarding party assembled, equipped with plasma rifles and breaching charges. Alara led them personally, piloting a dropship through the chaos toward the Critheri flagship. Enemy fighters pursued them, peppering their craft with fire. But Alara's skillful maneuvering kept them alive long enough to reach their destination. The dropship docked with a jolt, and the boarding party spilled out onto the alien ship's deck. The interior was dimly lit, filled with strange machinery and glowing symbols etched into the walls. Critheri soldiers rushed to meet them, their insectoid forms moving with eerie speed. A fierce firefight erupted, the sound of weapons echoing through narrow corridors. Alara fought alongside her team, her movements precise and calculated. She took down enemies with quick bursts of plasma fire, her training and instincts guiding her every step. As they pushed deeper into the ship, resistance grew fiercer, but so did their determination. They were close now, so close. Finally, they reached the command chamber. The Critheri commander stood in its center, flanked by a group of elite guards. He turned to face them, his expression unreadable behind his helmet. "You should not have come here," he growled in broken Galactic Standard. "You will die." Alara didn't respond. Instead, she raised her weapon and fired, sparking another round of combat. The fight was brutal and chaotic, but humanity's resilience carried them through. One by one, the guards fell, until only the commander remained. With a final shot, Alara brought him down, his body collapsing to the floor with a metallic thud. The impact was immediate. Across the battlefield, the Critheri forces began to falter. Without their leader to rally them, their coordination crumbled. Humanity seized the opportunity, launching a concentrated assault on Zalthar's station. Fighters breached the outer defenses. disabling shield generators and opening the way for dreadnoughts to unleash their full firepower. When the station's core exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the battle was effectively over. The remaining Crethary ships retreated, fleeing into the depths of space. Cheers erupted throughout the human fleet as the realization sank in. They had won. Back aboard the Aegis, Alara watched the wreckage of Zalthary's station drift apart. Her body ached from the fight, and exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders. But she felt a sense of satisfaction unlike anything she'd experienced before. They had struck a blow against the enemy, proving that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with even the most formidable foes. Yet, as the celebrations continued, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Crethary still held countless worlds and untold resources. This victory was significant, but it wouldn't end the war. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, and more lives lost before peace could truly be achieved. Still, for now, humanity had taken a crucial step forward. The galaxy had seen their strength, their unity, and their refusal to back down. And as the fleet regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the campaign, Alara knew one thing for certain. No matter how dark the path ahead might seem, humanity would keep moving forward. Because that's what they did. They endured, they adapted, and they conquered. For Erebus Prime, for Earth, and for every human being who dared to dream of a better future, the fight would go on. The victory at Zalthara Station sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of humanity's triumph spread quickly, carried by automated broadcasts and intercepted signals. For the first time in the war, hope began to take root among human settlements. The Crethary Syndicate, once seen as unstoppable, had been dealt a crushing blow. But Alara Voss and Admiral Marcus Hawley knew better than to celebrate too soon. This was just one battle in a much larger war, a war that would demand everything humanity had to give dot as the fleet regrouped and repaired its ships. Preparations began for the next phase of the campaign. Intelligence reports revealed that the Crethary were consolidating their forces around their capital world, Thaler. It was a fortress planet, protected by layers of orbital defenses and swarms of warships. Attacking it would be suicide, but it was also the only way to end the conflict decisively. Humanity couldn't afford to fight a prolonged war of attrition. They needed to strike at the heart of the enemy and break their will to fight. Admiral Hawley addressed the fleet once more, his voice calm but firm. "We've proven we can win battles," he said over the comm system. "But now we must prove we can win wars. Thaler is their stronghold, the center of their power. If we take it, we take them. There will be no retreat, no surrender. We go all the way." The crew aboard the Aegis listened intently, their faces etched with determination. Alara stood near the front of the room, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She understood what this mission meant, not just for humanity, but for herself. Every moment since Erebus Prime had led to this. Every life lost, every sacrifice made, it all came down to this final push. The journey to Thaler was long and grueling. Along the way, the fleet encountered resistance at every turn. Crethary patrols ambushed them in asteroid fields, forcing skirmishes that drained resources and tested morale. Supply lines stretched thin, and repairs became increasingly difficult as engineers worked around the clock to keep ships operational. Despite these challenges, the fleet pressed on, driven by the knowledge that turning back wasn't an option. Alara spent much of the voyage studying intelligence reports and tactical maps. She pored over data about Thaler's defenses, searching for any weakness she could exploit. The planet itself was surrounded by multiple rings of orbital platforms, each armed with devastating weaponry. Energy shields covered the entire system, creating a nearly impenetrable barrier. Even if the fleet managed to breach the outer defenses, they would still have to contend with the planet's surface-based weapons and the millions of troops stationed there. but Alara refused to let doubt creep in. Instead, she focused on finding solutions. Late at night, she sat in the Aegis briefing room with her team, brainstorming strategies and running simulations. They debated every possible approach, weighing risks against rewards. Eventually, they settled on a plan, a multi-pronged assault designed to overwhelm the Crithari defenses before they could mount an effective counterattack. The day of the attack arrived, and tension hung thick in the air. Pilots strapped into their fighters, checking systems and running pre-flight checks. Engineers double-checked weapon calibrations, ensuring every shot counted. Soldiers loaded magazines and checked armor plating, preparing for the worst. On the bridge of the Aegis, Alara stood beside Admiral Hala, watching as the fleet approached Thaler. The sight was awe-inspiring and terrifying. The planet loomed large in the viewport, its surface dotted with cities and military installations. Orbital platforms bristled with cannons and missile launchers, while squadrons of alien fighters patrolled the skies. Energy shields shimmered faintly around the entire system, casting an eerie glow across the void. "Signal all ships," Holly ordered. "Begin the assault." With those words, the battle began. The human fleet unleashed everything it had, firing volleys of missiles and energy beams at the shields. Explosions lit up space as projectiles impacted against the barrier, sending ripples through its surface. The Crithari responded in kind, launching waves of fighters and directing concentrated fire at the advancing ships. Chaos erupted as both sides clashed in a desperate struggle for dominance. Alara coordinated the attack from the bridge, barking orders to her crew and relaying commands to other ships in the fleet. Her voice remained steady despite the carnage unfolding around her. Fighters darted between enemy vessels, dodging fire while delivering crippling blows. Dreadnoughts exchanged salvos with orbital platforms, their massive guns tearing apart anything in their path. Smaller ships performed kamikaze runs, sacrificing themselves to create openings for others to exploit. Despite their efforts, the shields held firm. Every attempt to penetrate them met with failure, leaving the fleet exposed to relentless counterattacks. Ships exploded in fiery bursts, their crews lost to the void. Others limped away, severely damaged but still operational. The cost of the assault mounted with each passing minute, and morale began to waver. It was then that Alara made a decision. "I'm leading a strike team," she announced to her crew. "We're going to disable those shields." Once again, protests followed. "Captain, you can't," someone started, but Alara cut them off. "If we don't do this, we lose," she said simply. "Get me a shovel ready." Within moments, a small team assembled, equipped with cutting-edge tech designed to bypass alien systems. Alara piloted the shovel herself, weaving through enemy fire as she approached one of the shield generators. The ride was harrowing, with Crithari fighters pursuing them relentlessly. But Alara's skill kept them alive long enough to reach their target. The boarding party disembarked onto the platform, greeted by a hail of gunfire from Crithari defenders. Alara led the charge, her movements precise and calculated. Plasma bolts sizzled past her head as she returned fire, taking down enemies with ruthless efficiency. Her team fought alongside her, pushing deeper into the structure until they reached the generator core. "Plant the charges," Alara shouted, covering her teammates as they set explosives around the machinery. The countdown began, ticking away precious seconds. Just as the charges detonated, a massive explosion rocked the platform, destroying the shield generator and creating a gap in the barrier. The fleet seized the opportunity, pouring through the opening and unleashing hell upon the remaining defenses. Fighters swarmed the skies, engaging enemy craft in dogfights that lit up the atmosphere. Ground forces deployed to the planet's surface, securing key locations and neutralizing threats. The battle raged on, brutal and unrelenting, but humanity's momentum was undeniable. From the bridge of the Aegis, Alara watched as the tide turned in their favor. The Crithuri fought valiantly, but their forces were stretched thin, unable to match the ferocity of the human assault. One by one, their defenses fell, until only the capital city remained. As the final stage of the battle unfolded, Alara reflected on the cost of victory. So many lives had been lost, not just soldiers, but civilians caught in the crossfire. Entire worlds had been scarred by the conflict, their landscapes forever changed by the horrors of war. Yet even amidst the devastation, there was something remarkable about humanity's resilience. No matter how dire the situation became, they refused to give up. They adapted, they endured, and they fought on. By the time the last Crithuri stronghold crumbled, the fleet was battered but victorious. Thaler lay in ruins, its once mighty empire reduced to ashes. Survivors emerged from bunkers and shelters, their expressions a mix of relief and disbelief. Humanity had done the impossible. They had defeated an enemy thought to be unbeatable. But Alara knew the war wasn't truly over yet. Rebuilding would take years, perhaps decades. Wounds both physical and emotional would need time to heal. And somewhere out there, beyond the stars, new threats might already be gathering. For now, though, humanity had earned a moment of peace, a chance to rebuild and reflect. As the fleet regrouped above Thaler, Alara gazed out at the shattered planet below. Her heart was heavy with loss, but also filled with pride. Against all odds, humanity had risen to meet the challenge. They had faced the abyss and stared it down. And though the road ahead would be long and uncertain, one thing was clear. Humanity's spirit could never be extinguished. For Erebus Prime, for Earth, and for every human being who dared to dream of a brighter future, the stars would always belong to them. The battle for Thaler was over, but its aftermath lingered like smoke in the air. The once mighty capital of the Crithuri Syndicate lay in ruins, its cities reduced to rubble and its skies clouded with ash. Fires burned across the planet's surface, casting an orange glow that illuminated the faces of weary soldiers and survivors alike. For humanity, victory had come at a steep price. Ships were lost, lives sacrificed, and scars both visible and invisible carved into the hearts of those who remained. Alara Voss stood on the bridge of the Aegis, staring out at the devastation below. Her uniform was torn and stained, her body battered from days of relentless combat. Yet her eyes remained sharp, focused on what lay ahead rather than what had been left behind. Around her, the crew worked tirelessly to repair damage, tend to the wounded, and prepare for whatever came next. Despite their exhaustion, there was a sense of pride among them, a quiet acknowledgement that they had accomplished something extraordinary. Admiral Marcus Hawley entered the bridge, his presence commanding as always. He walked to Alara's side and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did good, Captain," he said softly. "We all did." Alara nodded but didn't respond immediately. She knew Hawley was right. They'd achieved the impossible. But the weight of everything they had endured pressed heavily on her mind. Erebus Prime, Zalthari's station, Thaler, all of it, had taken pieces of her. She wasn't sure she could ever get back. Still, she forced herself to focus on the present. There was still work to be done. The remnants of the Crithuri leadership surrendered unconditionally, their will to fight broken after the fall of Thaler. What remained of their government broadcast a message across the galaxy, acknowledging humanity's strength and vowing to never again threaten human expansion. It was a hollow promise, perhaps, but one that marked the end of this chapter in history. Humanity wasted no time securing its hard-won victory. Engineers landed on Thaler to dismantle alien technology and repurpose it for human use. Scientists studied captured data, eager to learn more about the Crithuri and their motives. Meanwhile, diplomats began drafting treaties to ensure lasting peace, or at least a fragile truce. The galaxy watched closely, waiting to see how humanity would wield its newfound dominance. For Alara, the immediate priority was ensuring the safety of the fleet and its crew. Many ships were barely holding together, patched up with scrap metal and sheer determination. Medical teams worked around the clock to treat the wounded, while counselors provided support for those struggling to cope with the horrors they had witnessed. Alara made rounds throughout the ship, speaking with her crew and offering words of encouragement whenever she could. She understood better than most the toll war took not just physically, but emotionally. One evening, as the fleet orbited Thaler, Alara found herself alone in the observation deck. The vastness of space stretched out before her, dotted with stars that seemed impossibly distant. She thought about Erebus Prime, the laughter of children, the hum of machinery, the warmth of community, and felt a pang of grief so sharp it nearly brought her to her knees. So much had been lost, so many dreams extinguished, but even in her sorrow, Alara couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Humanity had proven itself capable of greatness, not just through weapons and strategy, but through unity and resilience. They had come together when it mattered most, setting aside differences to stand as one against a common enemy. That spirit, that indomitable will to survive and thrive, was humanity's greatest strength. As if sensing her thoughts, Admiral Hale joined her in the observation deck. He leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the stars. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Alara hesitated before answering. "We rebuild," she said finally. "Not just our ships or our colonies, but ourselves. We've shown the galaxy what we're capable of, but now we need to show ourselves. We've earned the right to keep exploring, to keep growing, to keep dreaming." Hale nodded slowly. "And the Critheri? They'll remember us," Alara replied. "They'll tell stories about how humanity rose up against them, how we refused to back down no matter how bad things got. Maybe someday, they'll learn to respect us instead of fearing us." The two fell silent, lost in their own reflections. Outside the viewport, the wreckage of Thaler drifted lazily through space, a grim reminder of the cost of war. Yet beyond it, the stars shone brightly, untouched by conflict. They were a symbol of possibility, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light could still break through. Over the following weeks, humanity set about rebuilding. Erebus Prime became a priority, its ruins transformed into a memorial honoring those who had died. New settlements sprang up nearby, built stronger and more resilient than before. Across the galaxy, humans celebrated their triumph, holding parades and ceremonies to honor the fallen and inspire future generations. Alara returned to Earth briefly, invited to speak at a global assembly. Standing before thousands of people, she shared her experiences, not just the battles, but the sacrifices, the camaraderie, and the lessons learned. "War changes you," she told the crowd. "It takes things from you that can never be replaced. But it also shows you what truly matters: family, friendship, purpose. And above all, it reminds you that we are stronger together." Her words resonated deeply, earning her a standing ovation that echoed throughout the auditorium. When the event ended, reporters swarmed her, asking questions about the future of humanity and whether another war might arise. Alara answered honestly, admitting that the galaxy was unpredictable, but adding that humanity would always find a way to adapt and overcome. Back aboard the Aegis, life slowly returned to normal. Repairs were completed, and the ship was ready for deployment once more. Alara gathered her crew for one final briefing before leaving Thaler behind. "This isn't the end," she told them. "It's just the beginning." Out there, she pointed toward the stars, our countless worlds waiting to be explored. Challenges to face, discoveries to make, and stories to tell. "We've proven we can handle anything the universe throws at us. Now let's go see what else is out there." The crew cheered, their spirits lifted by her words. As the Aegis broke orbit and set course for parts unknown, Alara allowed herself a moment of peace. She looked out at the endless expanse of space, feeling a sense of wonder she hadn't experienced since before the war. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, but humanity had already proven it belonged among the stars dotted in the years that followed. Tales of the war spread far and wide. Songs were written about the bravery of soldiers, poems composed in memory of those who had fallen, and books filled with accounts of heroism and sacrifice. Humanity's place in the galaxy was secure, not because they sought conquest, but because they refused to give up when faced with annihilation. Alara eventually retired from active duty, choosing instead to mentor young officers and share her experiences with anyone willing to listen. She often visited Erebus Prime, walking among the rebuilt structures and remembering those who had called it home. Though the pain of loss never fully faded, she found solace in knowing that their legacy lived on in every colony founded, every ship launched, and every dream pursued. And so, humanity continued its journey among the stars. The shadow of war lingered, but it no longer defined them. Instead, they carried forward the lessons they had learned, that courage could overcome fear, that unity could conquer division, and that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity would always rise. For Alara, and for everyone who had fought alongside her, the message was clear. The Krithari had underestimated humanity and paid the price. But more importantly, humanity had proven something to itself, that no matter how dark the night, the dawn would always come. And when it did, the stars would shine brighter than ever before.